Hello everyone, Patrick Riley, Liberty University. This week we are discussing ideas for grants. Last semester I did an internship at the William Vicary Mansion, built in 1826 by Captain William Vicary. The structure, a Georgian-style mansion, is in Freedom, Pennsylvania. It is now the home of the Beaver County Historical Research and Landmarks Foundation. In 1973, the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, PennDOT, proposed widening Pennsylvania State Route 65. This project adversely affected the Vicary House. There was a discussion at the time of demolishing the structure. A former resident of Freedom, Arbutine of Pappas, through a letter-writing campaign and public outreach, managed to preserve the home. In 1973, PennDOT donated the house to the county, and eventually the site became the base of the Beaver County Historical Research and Landmarks Foundation. The site was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1975. Although the Vicary Mansion was preserved, an unsightly retaining wall was constructed that adversely affected the site when it's viewed from the street level. And you can see it right here. I am not an architectural historian, but an attempt must be made by historians during preservation to keep a site and the grounds looking as, quote, period as possible. An analogy would be adding a solar panel to the roof. The retaining wall has always bothered me. Here you have an impressive building that was constructed in 1826, and then you see this ugly modern concrete monstrosity. I have proposed on many occasions acquiring a grant to get the retaining wall faced with stone similar to the house. Although not contemporaneous with the structure, the wall would look more natural and part of the landscape. It would look even more natural if you planted ivy on it, and that would allow it to blend in to the landscape. One possible source of money could come from the Historic Preservation Fund of the National Park Service. There are competitive grants. On the National Park Service website, they provide a definition of the grants. They say, quote, State, Tribal, Local, Plans and Grants Division manages several grant programs to assist with a variety of historic preservation and community projects focused on heritage preservation. The funding for all the below grants, regardless of program, comes from the Historic Preservation Fund, end quote. The website also states that, quote, competitive grant programs provide financial assistance to support historic preservation projects to states, tribes, local governments, educational institutions, and nonprofit organizations. Each grant program has its own eligibility requirements as well as program objectives, end quote. One of the competitive grants available is the Save America's Treasure grants. And the website describes this program as, quote, the Save America's Treasures grant program was established in 1998 to celebrate America's premier cultural resources in the new millennium. After more than 20 years, this grant program has awarded more than 1,300 grants, totaling more than $300 million to projects across the United States. Funded projects, selected from 4,000 plus applications, requesting $1.5 billion, represent nationally significant historic properties and collections that convey our nation's rich heritage to future generations. The National Park Service administers Save America's Treasure grants in partnership with the National Endowment for the Arts, the National Endowment for the Humanities, and the Institute of Museum and Library Services, end quote. And this program is split into two different parts. The first part is for sites listed on the National Register of Historic Places and National Historic Landmarks. And then the second part is for collections, and that's defined as artifacts, museum collections, documents, sculptures, and other works of art. And you can see here the three examples. Preservation National Register and National Historic Landmarks. Preservation, as we discussed a couple minutes ago, represent artifacts, collections, sculptures, that sort of thing. The National Register of Historic Places is defined as historic places is the official list of the nation's historic places worthy of preservation. Basically, it's a list of places that are worthy of being preserved. It doesn't give them any protection whatsoever. It's just a list. It gives us some protection, but not very much. And then the National Historic Landmarks, which is defined as historic properties that illustrate the heritage of the United States. And a National Historic Landmark might be described as like maybe Gettysburg, or a significant house or a significant structure, Monticello, and such places. And there are protections that the government can give a structure that's listed on the National Historic Landmark. Perhaps someday I can manage to get a grant to face the retaining wall and get rid of that awful eyesore that's bothered me for so many years. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about the various grants available through the National Park Service. God bless.